Hey guys, and today I'm going to be reviewing, not reviewing, more like finding out who is the most effective character in an Inspector Calls. Is this reversed to you guys? To me, I'm looking at it right now, it's like flipped, mirrored. Now, if you don't know what Inspector Calls is, and I'll just give you the rundown of it. Inspector Calls is a thriller featuring Inspector Ghoul inspecting Burling and company, an entire family which they were celebrating upon a proposal of Mr. Burling's daughter. Now, the reason why the inspector is inspecting these bunch instead of, an actual serial killer was because he's inspecting Ava Smith, which I'll go through later. A girl named Ava Smith committed suicide, and in her diary, it's suspected that many of the suspects have to do with the Burlings. Now let's just get the aunt out of the room. Aunt referring to Edna. In the play and in the script, she hasn't been given any roles, but although the adaptation I have seen includes her doing random stuff like dinging a golden dong or something, and maybe creeping out 17-year-olds. But rather than that, she has very few speaking lines, and the lines that she does have are mostly maids, like what maids would do back in 1912. Now with this Ava Smith girl, she doesn't appear at all throughout the play. I'll actually give you a rundown of the characters. So of course we have Ava Smith, Arthur Burling, Sybil Burling, which is the wife of Arthur Burling, and then they have their children Sheila and Eric Burling. Sheila is the daughter, and Eric is the son. We have their mistress, or no, not mistress, maid, Edna, and then we have Inspector Ghoul, the inspector. So far, Edna is the most useless character in this play, and if you remove her, probably things will change a bit, but realistically, she's not that significant enough to be in the play. So removing Edna out of the equation, we have Inspector Ghoul, Gerald Croft, which I forgot to mention. Gerald Croft is the fiance of Sheila. And then we have Sheila, Eric, Sybil, Arthur, and Inspector Ghoul. That's all we have left. So Ava Smith. And so let's start off with the second most useless character in my subjective opinion. The rest of this is subjective. Everyone who's seen the play can agree that Edna is the least significant. Now, subjectively, Sybil Burling, aka Mrs. Burling, is the least significant out of all these characters due to the fact that she's basically Arthur Burling, but unlike Arthur Burling, she's more of the backseat advisor, telling the other characters to just back off the situation and more like deterring away from the plot instead of being involved with the plot. It's kind of like running away. It's basically just her attempt of running away from the situation instead of actually facing it. Unlike Arthur Burling, who's, yes, attempting to run away from the situation, although he's trying to stand up for his family. There's a difference. Removing Sybil and Edna out of picture, that leaves us with Arthur, Sheila, Eric, Gerald, Inspector Ghoul, and Ava Smith. That is 6 people. And, well, 8 characters, and then we're down to 6 people. I wonder who's the most effective. Now, the 2 characters that I would say are competing against each other for the spot of the most effective is Ava Smith and Inspector Ghoul. Now, both of them have the reasons why they've been most effective, and then also have things why they may be less effective than each other, but I'll go through each of them. And then later I can move on to Sheila, Mr. Burling, Eric, and then Gerald Croft. Ava Smith is basically the cause to this entire story. The whole point of the story is because of her. She's basically the reason why this thing happened. Although the issue is why she's not effective. If we're looking at how effective she is in the play itself, she's only effective for the plot. Not even this, like, if anyone at a glance looks at the stage and then you point out, "Oh guys, there's Ava Smith." And then, like, people who haven't seen the play are like, who's Ava Smith? Like, which one's Ava Smith? You mention all their names and then there's no Ava Smith. It's, well, she doesn't show herself in the play. However, this is where Inspector Ghoul comes in. Without him, the entire play doesn't drive on because he's the one who's controlling everyone. He's the one who's making everyone admit to the wrongdoings. And the issue, and that's when That's when the debate between who's more effective, Ava Smith and Inspector Gould. Now, even without stage presence, Ava Smith really shows an impact throughout the play, as many of the problems and the only thing that the play goes on about is what did the Burlings do to Ava Smith. And well, even Mrs. Burling had a cause to this. Everyone on the stage were tied up to this plot about how what inspired Ava Smith to kill herself, except Edna because she never appeared. But still, Ava Smith is the driving force. Ava Smith narratively is very important because the entire cause of this entire play is because of her. However, Inspector Gould is the one that's driving the family, and Gerald Croft, he's technically not part of the family by the end of this play, is driving all of them to admit the wrongdoings to Ava Smith. So it's either Ava Smith who's the cause, and Inspector Gould who's the drive, or who's the one moving. Now a new location leads to a different segue to well, let's get away from Ava Smith and Inspector Gould. Let's move away from Ava Smith and Inspector Gould for a minute. Now let's start with potential second place. Well, not really second place, but the second most effective character that really moved this play. And I'd say, in my opinion, or maybe many of you can agree, is Sheila. Now, Sheila and Eric are the only characters who have some sort of character development from point A, the beginning of the play, and point B, the end of the play. As everyone admits their wrongdoings to Ava Smith, Sheila and Eric realize that the system doesn't work and how the class system have been treating people unfairly. Sheila has rejected Gerald's second engagement, while Eric has been rethinking his thoughts lately and promised to do nothing bad to anyone ever again. You see where the inspector comes in. But why I would say that Sheila would be more powerful than Eric in terms of her prominence in this play is due to the fact that her presence in the stage always forces the people closest to her to just not resist. Without the inspector and Ava Smith, there would be no drive for Sheila and Eric to change. Without Ava Smith, Eric and Sheila would have just done their own business, and without the inspector, they would have no idea what they'd done to Ava Smith. So both of these characters, so that's the reason why Ava and the inspector are both above these characters in terms of how effective and how prominent they are in the play. Many may argue that Sheila is the most responsible for Ava Smith's suicide simply because she got her fired from a job that she really loves due to the fact of her own envy. This envy had driven her to be the most selfish character in the play. Maybe not the most, but one of the most selfish. Now, why I wouldn't consider Ava Smith to be the most effective character, but more like an all-rounder to her prominence, is simply due to the fact that she doesn't drive the play as much as the inspector does, nor have caused the entire play to happen. Because if Ava Smith got fired but she didn't kill herself, then this whole play wouldn't have happened still. The reason why the inspector came to the Burling's house is because Ava Smith killed herself, not because she got fired from a job because of Sheila. That would be a different scenario and probably a different play. So Arthur Burling, Eric, and Gerald Croft, I would say they're in the middle. Burling is the highest, while Eric and Gerald are below him, but Gerald and Eric are tied for their prominence because they show up, like, one of them shows up at Act 2 mostly and then disappears at Act 3, and another appears in Act 3 and disappears in but didn't appear in Act 2. Ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves 3 candidates: Sheila, Inspector Gould, and Ava Smith. Who has been the most prominent and most effective character in the play, simply due to their character arcs. And drum roll, please. Oh. The victor is Edna. Just kidding, what do you think? It's Ava Smith. It's quite obvious why Ava Smith is the most important character in the entire play. Even though the play is called An Inspector Calls, so meaning it should be the inspector to be the main character. The real main character is Ava Smith. How? Well, it's simple. When I mentioned that the inspector and Sheila were like the drive force, maybe like the ones moving the plot, I'm referring to them like drivers. Yes, I'm referring to a car metaphor here. Without a car, a driver is not a driver. He's just basically a person. Ava Smith, now this is gonna sound weird, is the car, because she's the one who caused everything, and to get from point A of the plot to point B of the plot, you need a vehicle, like a conflict. And the conflict revolves around Ava Smith. So I'm referring to Ava Smith like a car. Here, I'll just make it easier for you with like with a demonstration. Here we are. I'm just gonna do a quick sketch here on what I'm trying to say. So we have point A of the plot. Okay, let's just write plot. And A, and then there's point B. This is the road. Just imagine this is a road. Okay, this is the road. And our characters need to go from point A to point B. Now this is where the metaphor comes in. Just gonna draw a guy with a hat. He's the inspector, a really bad hat. And then we have triangles, which is going to SH. This is meant to represent Sheila. And then we can have a little kid here. And then we can just point here. Arthur. Okay, so the front seat is meant to represent the most effective characters, which is the one that are in the front. So that's Inspector Ghoul, Sheila, and Mr. Burling, representing the baby. Inspector Ghoul is driving the car to point B, while Sheila is supporting that while also giving her own thoughts. Arthur Burling is trying to crash the car off-road. You know, like what babies do in the front seat. Never mind about that. And then we have the rest of the characters here. Gerald, and then Eric. And then we have Sybil, another triangle. We just write S, and she's basically the little sister to Arthur. We could just do that as the example. And she's just behind Sheila because she's advising, well, let's, for this metaphor, the mom to listen to the baby who's trying to crash to the road. This is really odd, I know, but all saying that these two characters are trying to go off track while Sheila and Inspector are trying to go on road, and then there's Gerald and Eric going for the ride. Gerald with Sheila, but Sheila is counterpointing Gerald. This is a very complicated draft. Edna is the dog that is left home, so we should write another E, the dog at home. And then we have, yeah, that's basically everyone. And now we just need to draw a car. This is a really bad car. This is so messy. So this is the car. What is the car meant to represent? Well, this is Ava Smith, the one who causes this entire story to happen. This is the main reason why all these characters are on this road trip. And if you remove the car, where's everyone gonna go? Where's everyone gonna go now? There is no point. There's no conflict. It's just nothing. Without this entire conflict with Ava Smith, there wouldn't be a plot. The road is just blank. They have to walk there. They have to stretch the plot. And yeah, this is the weird metaphor. I'm just trying to say Ava Smith. Oh god, I'm really bad at drawing. You can just see why. You can see why Ava Smith is metaphorically the car of the story, and all these characters are the passengers / drivers. And yeah, that is my complicated metaphor. And yeah, that's basically it. Thank you guys for watching so much. I feel like this video is going to be really long. I haven't edited this yet. But yeah, that's why I think Ava Smith is the most effective character by the process of elimination, going through every character. Well, not every character in through, but you understand why Ava Smith. Well, in my opinion, maybe others will agree that Ava Smith is the main character, of An Inspector Calls. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later.